In the pristine ether before the dawn of earthly time, before the dust of creation had settled upon the void, there stood the being known as Michael, a name that echoed the eternal question and the ultimate loyalty, who is like God. And his essence was not born of choice, but of pure incandescent duty, a reflection of the divine will forged into a weapon of uncompromising celestial light. Yet beneath the shimmering armor and the wings of sapphire and pearl beat a profound, if rarely acknowledged heart, capable of sorrow vast enough to eclipse whole galaxies. For he was the prince of the heavenly host, the foremost among the seraphim, the field commander whose very presence was a bulwark against the unformed darkness, standing ever ready at the right hand of the Creator, absorbing the silent decrees and translating them into the relentless geometric precision of perfect order, his form majestic and terrible to behold, his eyes pools of ancient starlight that had witnessed the inception and the dissolution of countless cosmic cycles, yet always focused, always vigilant, always fixed upon the singular point of providence, and for ages uncounted, his life was a symphony of flawless service, conducting the celestial chorus in its harmonies of praise, marshaling the stars into their appointed orbits, and overseeing the endless, joyous work of creation as the Father brought forth light and life in dizzying, miraculous profusion, a realm of unity where every creature, from the lowest cherub to the highest throne, moved in blissful accordance with the divine rhythm, a state of being Michael believed was eternal and unassailable, the perfect expression of the ultimate good, but even the perfect luminous spheres of heaven held within them the seeds of discord, a discordant note that began to swell within the heart of his peer, the morning star, the brilliant, peerless Samael, whose light, once second only to the Creator's own, began to acquire a cold, hard, self-regarding luster, a subtle arrogance that grew from the contemplation of his own breathtaking perfection, leading him slowly at first, then with accelerating velocity, down the path of existential betrayal, convinced that his formidable intellect and magnificent power entitled him not merely to praise God, but to be God, or at least to challenge the very concept of sovereign authority. And Michael, watching this transformation with a heavy spirit that only true loyalty could inflict, tried with the quiet, firm counsel of a brother in arms to turn Samael back from the chasm, pleading with the once radiant being to remember the source of his glory, reminding him that true power lay in submission, not in self-aggrandizement. But Samael's pride was a fortress built too high, its ramparts lined with the seductive arguments of false freedom and the venomous rhetoric of resentment, drawing legions of the lesser angels to his cause with honeyed words and promises of a dominion free from the constraints of obedience, creating a rift that tore across the golden plains of heaven, fracturing the perfect harmony into two camps, the loyal and the rebellious, the defenders and the usurpers. And it was in that agonizing moment of schism when Samael, now calling himself Lucifer, the light-bearer turned shadow wielder, finally raised his banner in open, defiant rebellion, that Michael stepped forward not with a shout of anger, but with the quiet, resonating sound of absolute resolve, the sound of a stern duty being accepted, even when that duty meant tearing apart the cosmic family he was sworn to protect. And as the celestial trumpets of war sounded, a deep, terrible note that echoed through the empty firmament beyond the walls of paradise, Michael drew his sword, not a weapon of forged metal, but a blade of pure, concentrated divine authority, sharper than any edge and hotter than any sun, whose mere presence incinerated doubt and illuminated truth, leveling the celestial playing field against the physical and intellectual might of the rebel forces. For while Lucifer wielded raw power refined by cunning, Michael wielded principle backed by the omnipotence of the source. And the war in heaven began not with a clash of armies, but with the thunderous, heartbreaking collision of ideologies, where the very light of creation became the contested ground. The initial engagements were not battles of strategy, but tests of allegiance. fought across the shimmering rivers of fire and the crystalline mountains of the heavenly expanse, where angels once united in service were now locked in a grim, desperate embrace, their wings beating the ether into chaos, their spiritual forms shedding energy like collapsing supernovas. And Michael, though commanding the loyal host, the vast majority, unwavering and terrifying in their unity, fought with a focus born of necessity and grief. His movements swift and perfect, never wasted, always directed to neutralize, never merely to destroy, understanding that every blow struck against a rebellious angel was an incision into the very fabric of eternity, a wound that might never truly heal. But he pressed the attack with relentless vigor, flying at the head of his legions, a streak of blinding, righteous judgment, facing down the most formidable of Lucifer's generals, beings of immense power corrupted by the same blinding narcissism that consumed their leader, breaking their formations with the sheer kinetic force of his faith, his voice when he spoke, cutting through the din and the clamor like the voice of the whirlwind, reminding the wavering rebels of their oath, offering them one final chance at repentance before the irreversible finality of the fall. But for Lucifer himself, there was no longer any turning back, his beautiful face contorted by the furious resentment of the discovered usurper, and he sought out Michael not out of military necessity, but out of a personal, venomous desire to obliterate the living embodiment of the loyalty he had rejected, convinced that if Michael, the ultimate symbol of fidelity, could be broken, then the authority he represented would crumble, and their final confrontation took place high above the collapsing celestial planes, a duel that froze the other combatants in awe, a collision of two former equals, one burning with the cold fire of ego, the other with the steady, consuming flame of devotion. And Lucifer struck first with a force that could have shattered nascent worlds, bolts of searing, corrupted energy that Michael deflected with his shield, the shield of faith, its surface reflecting the dark energy back upon its source. But Michael did not merely defend, he advanced, his posture resolute, his movements a dance of perfect, inevitable justice, seeking not to dominate or humiliate, but to execute the decree. And their blades clashed in a thunderous silence, a sound only audible to the souls of the combatants, the sound of destiny dividing, Michael's blade, the sword of truth, seeking the vulnerable nexus of Lucifer's pride, the moment where his self-love became his weakness, and after an epoch-spanning struggle, a timeless minute filled with cosmic consequence, Michael found his opening not by superior strength, but by superior humility. For Lucifer fought for himself, and Michael fought for the eternal structure of creation, and that distinction, subtle but absolute, was the true margin of victory, allowing Michael's blade to connect, not physically, but spiritually, severing the bond between Lucifer and the divine grace that sustained his awesome power. And as that link snapped, the brilliant morning star was extinguished, his form collapsing inward into a vortex of despair and raw hatred, the sheer weight of his transgression becoming a crushing physical reality. And Michael, with a heart heavy as lead and a face set like granite, did the necessary thing, the terrible, righteous thing, lifting his sword and, with the full authority of the Creator invested in his will, casting Lucifer along with his third of the host out of heaven, a blinding, tragic cascade of falling stars plunging through the boundaries of the ether, hurtling toward the newly created cooling shell of a sphere called Earth, where they would be imprisoned in the shadow realm, becoming the fallen ones, the constant dark counterpoint to the glorious, unblemished light of the remaining creation. The silence that followed the great casting down was the loudest sound Michael had ever heard, a cosmic inhalation after the ultimate expenditure of effort. And though the war was won, the victor stood amidst the ruined brilliance of his home, feeling the sorrow of a lost brother more keenly than the triumph of his own success. For to the loyal angel, the fall of a single soul was an infinite tragedy, and Michael's work was far from over. with the stain of rebellion cleansed from heaven, his charge shifted to the protection of the burgeoning, vulnerable world of mankind, the Creator's ultimate, audacious experiment in free will, and he became the unseen watchman of the covenant, standing guard outside the sun-dappled gates of the Garden of Eden after Adam and Eve's transgression, his flaming sword turning every way, not to punish, but to protect them from the eternal soul-crushing despair of re-entering a paradise they had forfeit through their own choice, guarding them, too, from the now prowling serpentine cunning of the banished Lucifer, now known only as Satan, who sought only to corrupt what he could not possess. And through the long, unfolding history of humanity, Michael remained the ever-present, though often invisible champion of God's people, the defender of the law, battling the elemental demonic forces unleashed by the fallen, and intervening directly at pivotal moments where the fate of the righteous hung by a thread. Whether it was wrestling with Satan over the body of Moses, defending the prophetic visions granted to Daniel against the meddling princes of the Persian darkness, or, later still, in the ultimate revelation, standing ready to sound the final, terrifying trumpet of judgment and lead the faithful into the last, great war against the forces of ultimate evil at Armageddon. His service enduring across millennia, a monument to the virtue of unwavering persistence and the necessity of absolute moral clarity in a universe constantly trying to blend light and shadow into an ambiguous gray, for Michael knows that in the face of absolute evil, there is no compromise, only the righteous assertion of boundaries, and his life, spanning the entire history of existence, serves as a testament to the core fundamental truth that true strength lies not in the capacity to rebel, but in the unyielding fidelity to a higher principle, a principle that demands the warrior's spirit be tempered by a servant's heart, a lesson that rings particularly true in the annals of man, especially those American epics focused on righteous struggle and the preservation of liberty and order against the chaotic forces of self-interest, where the greatest heroes are those who never sought the crown but merely did the necessary, heartbreaking work of keeping the light burning, and from the celestial vantage point where Michael still stands, eternally vigilant, blade at the ready. His lesson echoes down to the striving soul of every human being, a truth far more profound than the mere defeat of a foe, but a realization that the greatest, most crucial battle is not fought with swords of fire or legions of angels, but within the silent, sacred space of the individual heart, where every dawn brings a new, silent, agonizing choice. The choice between the dazzling, corrosive allure of prideful self-sovereignty, the Luciferian temptation to become one's own god, demanding the world conform to one's own will and desire, and the humble, luminous, enduring strength of principled servitude, the Michaelic choice to align one's limited, precious existence with the boundless, benevolent, and often mysterious pattern of divine will. Understanding that only through this radical humility and constant vigilance can the human spirit find its true, unassailable freedom and contribute to the restoration of harmony in a world still scarred by the cosmic tragedy of the original, agonizing fall from grace.